welcome to El Podcast from Pittsburgh Latino magazine. We're here on our new episode. Our show connects, informs, and empowers everyone in our Latino community to thrive here in Western Pennsylvania. And today I am so happy to have a good friend and amazing business leader here in Pittsburgh, Melanie Boyer.
Thank you for having me, and thank everybody for tuning in. It is amazing to see you growing, where you're going, and all of the people that are being influenced, impacted, and helped by everything you're doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And Melanie, for those who don't know her, she is the CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in Pittsburgh. And she's going to be talking to us about all that here today. And
the name is so long. Look, I don't expect anyone to get the full name, right? It's the Pittsburgh Metropolitan.
We're shortening it.
Right, it's the Pittsburgh Metropolitan Area Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Foundation. Who is going to remember that whole thing?
So then to start, our tradition is always for the guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. So go ahead.
Okay, well, I am Melanie Marie Boyer. My family is from Colombia. I have my Colombian citizenship as well. So while I grew up technically here in Pittsburgh during the school years, I spent a lot of my summers in Colombia. My mom's whole family is still there. I don't know. We've known each other for years, but I don't know if you know this. You know, my grandma is one of 17.
Oh my gosh. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I mean, here our family is very small. My dad is from Pittsburgh, but he was really excited by Colombian culture. You know, he taught me to cook some Colombian foods, you know, all of those things. But eventually I went to college, obviously, with everything that I've done. I worked at the Attorney General's office, but there was always just this entrepreneurial spirit in me. And I didn't have anyone in my family or anyone that I was really around that could teach me about it or that even really normalized it. I was just always told that I was maybe a little bit crazy, too much, too outspoken, like calm down, sit down, right? And I was never going to do any of those things. So eventually I met someone who actually used to be the chairman of the board of the chamber. Now, my mom had been in the chamber since she was pregnant with me. So that's kind of crazy. I'm like a chamber fetus. Yeah. Like
the chamber child.
The little one. But he was the first person who, you know, not only recognized that in me, but saw the value and communicated it to me in a way that I finally saw, like, where the place could be for that energy that I had. And immediately it kind of went into marketing. I did some marketing for his company, recruiting, and that led to interactions with the chamber. So, you know, Guillermo Velasquez from PMAHCC, he was running the website for the chamber. It had been around for some years, and they had just started the scholarship fund a year or two before, but it wasn't his full-time thing, and he was moving on to PMAHCC and doing some other things. So he taught me how to manage the website. And as I started getting into that, I planned a couple of events, right? And as I'm getting involved, I'm meeting more people who are growing their businesses, and I'm seeing how all of my skills from all of the jobs that I had plus my company all really fit together to build. And what a natural knack I had for creating programming to fit those needs, right? Then I went to our national United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, which, like, shout out to them. They're amazing.
They are.
I went to their national conference. No, it was their legislative summit. And I sat down and, you know, all the presentations were wonderful, but I knew I was there for a different reason. I heard a little bit about what one of the chambers did, what programs they had, how many staff members they had. And I'm like, wait a minute. They're getting paid to empower Latinos to build their businesses, grow economically, and give back to the community. So I got a notebook, a little bigger than this one. I made a bunch of topics of what I would need to make our chamber grow and be able to give back to the community. And this is kind of creepy, I don't know. I looked up the chamber presidents, I looked up pictures of them, and I found all the ones that were there, and I sat outside of all of these rooms where the presentations were, and I was like, can you please talk to me for a minute? And I asked all those questions. When I came home, I formulated a plan, and over the next year, I implemented that plan until our first program itself, I think it was like around $60,000-$70,000 worth of services and other things that I exchanged for value based on like the audience that I had built up and what I could offer them back. And I put it all together, and that's what I was able to use to then go for a grant to say, we need sustainable
exactly what you needed.
everything. And that's I know that was like a lot, and I talk a lot, but I never knew that any of this was possible. I never knew what the potential was, and learning not only what my power was, but how I could help others, and then seeing the power of the Latino community and what we do locally, statewide, and nationally. If we can grow and empower Latinos, we can empower our nation and our whole world, really.
Yeah, and I love that. And tell me, what year was it that you started doing that meeting that you went to?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I, that was 2019, because in 2018 I started really doing things with the chamber, because I remember I had that, oh my gosh, the gala. Guys, we make mistakes and we learn. The gala was amazing, but what people...
I volunteered for that.
She knows. She knows. Behind the scenes, that was like the first big event I had ever planned. And, I dream big. I live as big as I can.
It was big. It was beautiful.
It was, 450 people. So it was the largest black tie Latino event that Pittsburgh has ever seen. And I planned it as my first big event ever. And burnout. Burnout is crazy. So yeah, I had some major burnout there, but it all pulled together. I don't think anyone knew except for the volunteers. I'm so sorry. But we pulled it together, and it was amazing because it wasn't just like we had this event, but we integrated everyone, right? Like when you walk down the halls, there were these big pictures of our business owners going down the halls, and everyone was taking pictures with those. There were students who had scholarships that did dance performances where they actually like came through the crowd and danced right in the middle of everything. Every sponsorship, I required that every sponsor also give a ticket to 1 to 2 students to sit at their tables, and we matched our scholarship recipients with companies that they wanted to work with that they didn't feel like they could connect with. Now, all that to say, it was amazing, but when you need help, ask for help. For real. Like, ask for help earlier on. I would absolutely do it again, but a lot of lessons were learned, and that's just kind of how we do things. We see the need, we try to give back the most that we can and engage the most, and then I sleep less.
Yeah, no, I truly remember that event as like so grand, and amazing for our community. And it's actually one of the reasons that I am here today with Pittsburgh Latino magazine. I'm not lying. It was like one of the reasons that I started this. So, Melanie,
I actually remember exactly what you were wearing, because I have looked at those pictures so many times because I use them for different things. Even like when I'm talking about you, I'm like, okay, where's her pictures from the last event? So like, I remember. I don't share with everyone, but I do remember.
Well, good. I'm glad you have my wardrobe.
I'm like, I'm gonna borrow that.
So let's start. That was a little bit about you and about the chamber. We're gonna talk more about the chamber a little bit later, but now let's put some numbers to the change and the impact that Latinos make in the economy here in Pittsburgh and in the United States.
I love this topic, right? This is something that is, pretty taboo right now and almost difficult to talk about publicly. But the reality is we have the economics behind us, right? Latinos, we are the 5th largest GDP in the world. So that's Hispanics in the United States are the 5th wealthiest if we were our own country, and we're soon to surpass Germany. So we will be the 4th wealthiest nation in the world which that's just crazy to think about. So when you look at companies, businesses, anything, if you're not including Latinos, you can literally never reach the highest dollar figure that you have the potential for ever. So when people ask me, do I have to be Hispanic to be in the chamber? I'm like, do you like money? Do you? Because if you like money, there's just absolutely no way that you shouldn't interact with the Hispanic community. And we can make that case every single time from, the person who is the most on board with making sure that we're reaching out to all the groups to the person who, I'm not going to use that word, but does not want to reach out to any diverse group. At the end of the day, everyone cares about their bank account. So let's talk about some of these numbers. So from 2010 to 2018, Pittsburgh lost 3% of its population. During that time, Latinos in Pittsburgh, in the greater Pittsburgh area, grew 170%. Now, that number comes from the Duquesne Small Business Development Center. That is a tremendous number. Now, we are a little bit behind in population compared to other cities, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But that number is absolutely tremendous. Now, 18.9% of the U.S. population are Latinos, but yet we're responsible for more than 53% of all of the population growth. Now, to put that in perspective for you, 2020 and 2021, we were looking at losing $266,000 people, right? So think about when you look at everything that affects economics, population is a huge one. If the United States lost 266,000 people, what would that do to even the stock market? Because of Latinos, we gained 800,000 instead. So that was a huge marker that we turned around. Yeah. 74% of new workers are Latinos. 82% of workforce growth. We're purchasing 66% of new homes and 25% of all youth and 6 out of 10 millennials. So when we look at all of those numbers, oh, and wait, I'll add one more. Latinas, girl, do you know 73% of us start businesses? Yeah. We both have businesses, both of us. So that makes sense, right? Yeah. We create 50% of all new jobs in the United States, and we have for the past 5 years consecutively. What is that doing for the economy? Then you look at that population growth, you look at the age, right? You look our young people are Latinos. So when we're looking at the future of consumers, the future of the workforce, across the board, Latinos are empowering our economy. So when we talk about how to strengthen our country, it is not to remove Latinos. It is to help us grow and help us contribute more, because now, I don't know that I need to brag about this, but we also do spend the highest percentage of our income. I don't know how you're hitting up Ulta and your bags, but I know I'm contributing to that number. I'm not going to deny it.
Yes, we do. And when you mentioned about Latinas, there is actually a report that was made with all those numbers, specifically about the contribution of Latinas to the GDP. And I am going to add a link about that on our show here.
I love it. Yeah, there's so many great stats. I want to shout out Claudia Romo Edelman. Mm-hmm. So if you guys don't already follow her on LinkedIn, I never do shout outs, but she is amazing. Her organization, the Hispanic Star, they come up with all these stats that they use for Hispanic Heritage Month and other times. And this is what I do every day. I am in every room saying, we need to connect with the Hispanic community. And every time I see something from her, I learn. So that's one I would highly recommend.
Yeah, no, I do follow her, and I do think she's amazing. And she shares amazing content there too. Yeah. Great. So yeah, all those numbers, it's amazing to hear it. We see it, right? Because we're involved in the community, but to actually hear them, it's...
Well, and I want to bring up also that, when we say, we see it, I think, Pittsburgh is catching up now, but one of the things I used to hear the most, we have a scholarship that we give out every year to Hispanic students, and I would call these schools, and they would literally say to me, we don't have any Hispanics at our school. And My immediate reaction, the words were not the most kind in my mind. Of course, you hold back. But I'm like, why do you think that is? Right? And then we kind of got into these conversations, and the one that stands out the most is a guidance counselor who I really think had the best of intentions told me, we don't have any Hispanic students at our school. I said, why do you think that? And this was the same answer that I heard a lot. I don't see any and I don't hear any. I said, well, what are you looking for?
Right.
What are you listening for? And those answers weren't there. So a little bit fast forward, I started like really getting into conversation with her, which took an immense amount of patience at the time because, from the perspective that we are at, it almost felt like it had to be willful ignorance. Like it had to be a choice. But having more conversation, I found out it absolutely wasn't. She just had not been exposed. And I was so glad that I was as patient as I was because as we led down the path, do you know, I told her that Spain would be included. And she ended up telling me, I'm not even joking, that she herself had a Spanish grandmother and that her children could qualify for our scholarship, right? And so it was just such this like beautiful moment. I even told her like, welcome to the family. So I think that, there's probably a lack of education, a lack of understanding, and also that we don't all claim it, right? Especially like my parents, I'm not sure like if your parents felt the same, but my parents' generation and even earlier generations, I think there was such a push towards assimilation to avoid, any negative sentiment. And I hope that we are in a different time where we can all own who we are and what our contributions are and work together for a better everyone.
Absolutely,
and everything.
Absolutely. I love that. Let's talk about Pittsburgh specifically and the growth of Latinos here, which you already mentioned that is small compared to other, bigger cities or cities that are close to here. That's kind of like whenever a new Latino gets here from one of those cities, like the first thing you hear is like, there's no Latinos here.
Yeah, we are historically behind. I heard that so much, not as much now, but I would say maybe like 3-4 years ago, so many people were leaving. And I would ask them, well, why are you going? And they said that I don't see places I'm comfortable with. I don't hear places, where I can eat food that I'm familiar with, speak the language. I don't feel that sense of community that Latinos, we need that, right? But now we have all of these different areas popping up. So I'm like, why is this? I don't think that, in the current generation, there's not that understanding. I decided to dive a little deeper. I asked a lot of people. I got some weird answers. But the conclusion that I came to after speaking, even with a historian.
What were you asking them?
I'm like, why are we so behind? What was the difference and the change? Because, we have the businesses popping up, but why don't we have these, specific communities where people can feel instantly at home, where they can see their food, see the language, or walk through the streets and hear the music? Why can't people feel at home? So the answer that I got was that, as Pittsburgh was really starting to develop with all of the universities and the corporations, it was recognized early on that the Hispanic population was growing in other areas. A lot has to do with our airport and the touch point because we don't have a lot of direct flights, right? Sure. So people fly to New York, they stay in New York. Who's going to drive to Pittsburgh? Yeah. But then on top of that, these companies, they were recognizing that the next generation is growing their numbers for Latinos. So they wanted these people in these higher positions and these educated, with all these different expectations to be somewhat Latino, right? So they started bringing people in, but what they were doing was they were saying, okay, here are these neighborhoods, here's these neighborhoods, and they were just sending everyone to the suburbs. They were guiding them in the best way that they could, but there was no Hispanic cultural reason behind that. It was all corporate. So everyone spread out No one knew that anyone else existed. A lot of people were still assimilating. And when you found Latinos, you're like, okay, here's my one, here's my two.
Right.
And that's kind of where the Latin American Cultural Union sprung up. And then the Hispanic Chamber was the next organization to pop up. And they kind of started growing together in those early days when I think people would tell me, they're like, oh, there's like 10, 20 Latinos. But a lot of them were working for these corporations, and they were fitting into kind of the groups at the corporations that they didn't need to go outside
like
of that.
The mold that was already like established.
It was so much more corporate and education, and now we started breaking out of that mold and coming into what Latinos do. Like, we are passionate, we are driven, we are entrepreneurial, we start businesses at a rate faster than any other group. And now that we're starting to break into that and start all these different businesses, the landscape is changing. And now we're seeing, because every business that starts, think about a business from any group, right? Who are you going to hire? You're going to hire family, friends. Those are people within your community. Then they especially talk about it on social media from people from anywhere, and they come and they want to be a part of that growth. They're excited. And so I think that is what is really leading to now having all of these areas where people really feel a sense of community and a sense of familiarity. And I think, I don't know the numbers on this, but I think we have less people leaving. And if you're thinking about leaving, just reach out. We're here. We can talk. We can help.
Yes. Vamos a tomar un pequeño break para agradecer a nuestro patrocinador Lively Law Firm. No te vayas, que ya volvemos.
En Lively Law Firm nos enfocamos en asuntos urgentes de inmigración. Ofrecemos consultas legales gratuitas para nuevos clientes. Si te enfrentas con una deportación, un proceso de expulsión o estás buscando asilo, nuestros abogados están aquí para luchar por tus derechos. Confía en nosotros para brindarte apoyo legal compasivo, receptivo y dedicado cuando más lo necesites. Agenda tu consulta gratuita por llamada o mensaje de texto al 412-253-2955.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've been here for almost 30 years and I've seen the growth, and the change in the population here of Latinos and all the businesses that they've started and that people love, all these different restaurants, food trucks, right? Food truck season's coming soon.
So good. I wait for that. So do you feel differently about Pittsburgh? Because I know, like, when I talked to my mom, especially, she came here originally for high school, stayed for college, and she said, when she came through the tunnel, she instantly felt at home. But I don't think it's that way for everyone. What was your experience?
So for me, I'm going to say a quick joke here. The very first time that I came here, I went to school at CMU, and they had a special program called the Sleeping Bag Weekend at that time. So it was around April. I was a senior in high school, and I came to stay for the weekend. So when I got to the airport and I saw the train, I was like, where's that train taking me? I was like, I am not taking that train.
Oh, no.
So I stood there maybe like 10 or 20 minutes, and I was like, I can't take that train. Like, where is that taking me? And then finally, of course, it's like I realized that I actually had to take the train.
So wait, where did you do the sleeping bag thing, though?
It was at CMU. Like,
okay.
Kids from from all over the country. I came from Puerto Rico, but so we came for the weekend and just kind of like experience. They had different activities, and they were trying to convince you, to come to go to school there, and it worked for me. So.
Oh my gosh, shout out to CMU. Like, that's amazing that they're, getting students here from all backgrounds. I wonder if that program still exists. If not, we got to bring it back.
Yeah, I don't think it exists, because every time I mention it to people, they're like, oh, like, that's different.
I did that at the Science Center. It wasn't like the same reason, but when I picture the sleeping bag, I just pictured us at the Science Center, like all snuggled up, like next So, like the moon landing stuff,
Right.
It's weird.
Right. So when you say like, how it was for me, so that was, I'm from a small town in Puerto Rico, so that was kind of big for me.
But that's community, right? As soon as you were here, you were having that experience with other students who were on like the same plane as you, and instantly you start building community. And I think that's one of the things that's so important is when anyone comes from anywhere, or even if they're from here and they feel like they haven't found their place or their people, that we make them feel welcome and we give people the resources they need, not only to exist, but to thrive and be able to re-engage afterwards, which, by the way, I see you doing every day.
And I agree with that. And to me, like what I liked about Pittsburgh was that it still has that homey kind of like small town, like where I come from feel, but you also have all the amazing activities and organizations, places that you can visit. It's kind of like the best blend, right?
Small town, big city.
Right.
I think too, the other thing about Pittsburgh that I always try to tell people when they're new here is, especially Latinos, most of us are growing our families, growing our careers. It is one of the easiest places to grow, in my opinion. When I look at both people like you and I, Latinas, who we started our own things, we're moving, we're growing, we're connecting to get where we are, to get this, you guys, to have this in New York City, right? We're looking at like generational wealth for many things. We're looking at these positions where you can't have an executive director, a CEO title, unless you've been in your job, no matter how good you are at it, for 20 years or more, or you have all of this background. But when you're coming here for the first time, or your parent is coming here for the first time, you don't have those deep embedded roots. Yeah. And Pittsburgh is, for me, what the American dream always was. When you work hard, when you try hard, when you network, when you get that one in, you can keep growing and growing and growing. And I think that it is so much more difficult in cities like Miami, New York, where as Latinos, we are already one of how many million. But here in Pittsburgh, we still have an edge in that drive. We have it.
We're special.
We've been special.
Many times I've thought, sometimes, people are like, oh, are you going to move somewhere or something? And I think that my magazine can only exist here, in Pittsburgh.
We're going to make her grow it anyway. But really, Pittsburgh, you're right. Like having that home and having that culture, that's the other thing, is that Pittsburgh has historically, from a lot of perspectives, not everyone's, but seemed to be lagging in that claimed culture. We had all these different areas that had their own little cultures, but Pittsburgh as a whole, and I think that we've really been working together to grow that, whether it's just a group of community leaders, corporate leaders, maybe even political, I'm not sure, but what I do know is that it's everyone working together so that we can have a better future for all.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And since we're talking about that, let's talk about the programs that the Chamber offers, which are many. Let's chat a little bit about that.
So I didn't know anything about nonprofit when I started. Mm-hmm. I did not know that this was a career. My mom was a social worker, so you would think I would put together what programs were. She was in charge of the Angel Tree, also when people had difficulty paying their bills with People's Gas, longtime supporter of the Hispanic Chamber, thank you. She was in charge of those programs, but I still didn't put it together. So as I started learning, I started realizing I was helping people one-on-one. What do you need for your business? Let's figure out how to get it, who we can partner with to make sure that we can provide that. But what I realized was it was often cheaper and obviously more scalable and made more sense to help people at scale, to create these programs that we're symbiotic, because it doesn't just help the business owners, but it helps the corporations reach those business owners. Seeing that and that trust helps reach the community. And then we can live in this symbiotic place where everybody benefits together, including the organization, because then we can get that funded and have sustainability internally. So all those things come together. Like I said, we had our scholarship program, which had just started. But after I learned what programs all these other ones had, I was like, we are going to figure this out. We are going to do entrepreneurship. We're going to help people grow. We're going to help people grow professionally, because we don't have enough Latinos in, powerful places in corporations to make the decisions to benefit our communities. What are the things that we can do? Now, I have probably like 50 different program ideas, and I've got at least 20 that are literally fully written out and grant ready. If you're a funder, I'm here for you. And it benefits them, right? Because when we're talking about the future of consumers and we're talking about that bottom line, this is the community they want to reach. So again, symbiosis. So we've got a lot going on. I want to start, though, by talking about something new. It is funded by Pennsylvania's CDFI network. So we got a very decent sized grant to help small businesses. And one of the things about funding is that it can be so specific on what you can spend it on that it almost like hinders more than it helps, because you have all this reporting and all of these hurdles. Yeah. And then you're like, how much can I actually help people once I fulfilled all their requirements that feel so unnecessary? So not to say that we're never grateful, but this specific grant really gave us the ability to think outside of the box. So immediately I was like, what do people need and how can we sustainably provide that? So we looked at our smart advisors. They are AI-enabled smart advisors. Now, what does that mean, right? It can mean anything. And especially, I think a lot of people are still intimidated by AI. So I thought, AI is definitely the key to taking business owners and sitting them down. I'm not going to name them because I think that all of these programs have value, and sitting one-on-one with the human obviously has value. But the reality is that as a business owner, do you have time to sit down and meet at 3:00 in the afternoon, etc.? No. When are your free times that you can grow your business? What time of night is that?
Right. like at 10.
10? Oh my God, I'm like 3. Ooh.
And we wait for the kids to go to sleep. Hopefully, if they do it before.
Yeah, and even if the kids are just going to bed, like say it's 8:00. Who is going to be there to help you one-on-one? And also, you don't know how much homework they have. You don't know all of these things to even schedule at that time to grow your businesses. Latinos, we're the most likely to start a business. We create the most jobs, but we're the least likely to reinvest in our business. And we are the least likely to scale, the least likely to reach the $1 million mark. But yet we create the most of everything. So how can we empower that? And how can we do it in a way that's sustainable? Now, nonprofits, especially now with a lot of the funding crises, we can't hire a ton of people. We also, no matter who we hire, I can't pay them enough to be there for you at 3:00 in the morning. I mean, if you have my cell and you text me, on the record, I'm sometimes awake and I do what I can, but it's just not scalable. So we created these AI smart assistants with specific ideas in mind. We didn't want anyone to be intimidated because, you can get on ChatGPT and talk about whatever you want, but you don't know what information you're getting. You have to know how to use it and be extremely specific to get localized data. So we used all of that to create 7 different specifically for business and professionals smart assistants. And it's amazing because you can get help with how do I get a loan, a business plan. You go a lot of places and you're paying $800, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to help with your business plan when you can sit down with this targeted assistant and talk through those things. But there's so much more. And then not only that, but being able to scale internally and externally with having, whether it be SOPs or, our own HR policies or how to work with the chamber. This is kind of weird, but there's a Melanie bot.
I saw it. Or I saw her.
It's so weird, but like I can't be everywhere, and I want to be able to talk to you and anyone else who wants to work with the chamber on what they can do and how we can interact, and I just can't be that for everyone. So, and they're still in beta, so if you have a complaint, let me know because we're working on it. But it has all the information so that exactly, like all of us, right? Melanie's not perfect. This one, that one, none of them. So we're working on it, and that way, like if 100 people right now happen to see this podcast this second and want to say, how can I interact with the chamber? They can all go there and at the exact same time be able to talk to, I call her the Melanie bot, but they are smart advisors. I don't like to call them bots, but the Melanie bot, and get all those answers, have a deep conversation. Whereas I can never fit that many slots on my calendar, as a business owner, community leader, nonprofit executive, single mom. We can't do it all. So
yeah, I like the flexibility because you know how it is. Sometimes we see programs and we're like, oh my God, this is what I need, for my business. And then when you look at the schedule, be it online or in person, like, many times it doesn't work. I've had to not do something because that's the time that my son goes to soccer practice or my daughter has musical practice or, whatever it is. And I it sounds really good.
And Latinos too, we are the most likely, statistically speaking, from the Pew Research Center. So I don't want to, offend anyone, but we are the most likely to reinvest in family before reinvesting in business, if ever. And investing is a good word to use because first of all, you can learn about investing on there. But second of all, talking about investment when it comes to cost, I think very early on, it just became really obvious to me when I saw some of these, especially national sponsorship dollars and the line items that local, state, and federal government was putting towards helping our communities grow, especially in entrepreneurship, because it affects, our whole economy and brings up everything. I was like, I do not want our businesses to be paying for these things, right? So even like with our Business Success Academy, the value, I think we've got it now at about $25,000 per participant. And we don't want $1 from anyone. When we worked on that grant, I made sure, which if you guys are interested, and you want to work with our smart advisors, we can give out free memberships to qualifying small businesses. And even if you're still in a bind and you're not qualifying, just reach out to us. We're all about accessibility, even when it comes to our events. If someone doesn't have money for a ticket, or even if you do, but you're like, my business is barely making it this month, because we've all had those months. No one is alone. We are here to make it happen. And so we have a grant where we can give a very decent number of memberships so that people can access these smart business assistants and grow their businesses where they are, when they're ready, at their own pace, and have that accessible at their fingertips anywhere, anytime, on any device.
Yeah, and this is like your latest, like you said.
Oh, this one, I'm so excited. Can you
tell? But they have so many things. You need to follow them, throughout the year, and just be on top of it, looking at what they are talking about on social media and on their website.
Well, I was going to say the other thing is you don't have to keep up necessarily, because you could just follow us on Facebook, or you could sign up for the newsletter on our website at PMAHCC.org, but also just Google Pittsburgh Hispanic Chamber and it's all there. We're also really big on Instagram, and we also want to promote our businesses. Anytime that Maria has something that she posts, we want to make sure that we're sharing that. Our small businesses, we're in this process of creating these forms to make sure that members can post on our job board. People can send their resumes so that we can get them out, that they can post in our newsletter, on our social media. I mean, we reach on average about 20,000 people a month, and we built that for you. That is for the community, so that we can all use that together to grow.
Yes. And since you mentioned the different, oh, there you go.
We
You
got
were
it
right there.
ready.
She got it right there.
So, yes.
In the latest magazine, which is the March, April, there is a whole section on the Business Success Academy.
So the Business Success Academy is something that we run every single year, and there is a series of partnerships that come along with it. And one of them is with Maria, and previously Presente Pittsburgh, but now Pittsburgh Latino magazine. And I'm so excited that we started before, she grew into her like now blossoming brand when she was just starting. And this, I'm not sure how much you can see, but this is each of our businesses that participated in the program. So every year we have 20 Latino businesses that participate in the program. I think you did one year, right?
I did, yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the program? Tell me what you remember.
So I'm going to, before saying that, I'm just going to show that it's actually 4 pages. Like there's many, many businesses here. So make sure you take a look at that. So let's put that over here. And for me, the best thing about the Business Success Academy was meeting with other business owners and with Joe, who would guide us during these meetings, and you just having conversations. And many times when you hear what other business owners are going through, many times it matches something that has happened to you in the past. And it's a really great environment where you can learn from each other. So that was my favorite thing about the program.
So I'm glad to hear you say that, because one of the things that was really important to me, this is something that I just came up with one day, and I started writing things down, and I'm like, what are all the things that businesses need? So there are a few components, but specifically that component with the interaction and that group learning. A lot of funders were asking, okay, are you working with small businesses? Are you working with entrepreneurs? Are you working with startups? Are you working with long-term businesses? The answer is yes to everything, because just like with mentoring, right? It's not just the younger person or the new person that is learning from the person who's already been established, right? We all learn symbiotically, and we all deal with problems in a different way, and we can all grow from that. So I wanted to make sure that whether someone was looking at starting their business, someone had been operating for 20 years, or whether someone was kind of mid-stage or they were looking for funding, that they all came together so that as they grew in these different ways, everyone could learn from each other, and that they would grow that community, which I hope you guys are still in touch. I'm thinking about having little reunions too. But that was my favorite part. So it means so much that you also felt that way. But in addition, we want to make sure that we're providing other outside resources. So we have Higher Images. They are a marketing company that works a lot with our chamber, and they do advising for marketing. Did you do the marketing piece?
I did.
Tell me about it. Oh, I'm putting her on the spot.
So I met with Linda in person from Higher Images, and we discussed so many, just ideas. Because like you've said many times today here, we all have so many ideas in our heads, and it's about getting them out of our heads and actually writing them down, talking to someone who can tell us, does that sound like something we could do, something worth trying? And that's what I did with Linda that day. So yeah,
I love it. And I think the other thing is so many marketing companies just wanted to say, well, what service do you want to pay for? But they actually learn about your company and help you find a strategy for the next step. And then we also have the financial package, which this year was sponsored by Citizens Bank. Thank you, Citizens. And they work with each of our businesses to say, okay, what are your financial goals? What do you need? How can we guide you towards that? And of course, they're like, well, here are our products, but they're more so building the relationships to say, all right, what do you need? How can we enable you? Because when we build that trust, we know that you'll come back at another stage, which is so important to meet people where they are. Then we do the advertisements, which we showed you guys in the magazine, which is exposure that a lot of businesses, especially starting businesses, have not seen. They don't, have always at the front of their mind to do a print ad. And then there's other components as well, but every program that we have, we want to make sure that it not only has like this knowledge side of it, but that it has a direct, tangible, and economic benefit immediately available. So we want to take services that like your business would pay, up to $25,000 for, and we want to give that to you in addition to a membership where you can continue to advertise to 20,000 people a month and continue to come to networking events and, et cetera, posting on the job board and coming back and, hopefully having these groups where you can have conversations. Look, I'm writing my next program in my head.
She's getting her next idea ready. Right?
Maria said she's going to head that one up. No, just kidding.
So before we go, do you have anything that you want to remind everyone of? Any promotions or anything you want to?
I would say not just for our organization. Of course, check us out. Let me know if you're interested in a complimentary membership, or if you are on the fence about signing up, you could chat with the Melanie Bot, or, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to have that conversation. But I just think it's more about community, right? All of these things we're talking about, I didn't know this was possible, and I'm sure that you didn't think about having a magazine or a podcast before. And as we're making these connections, and as we're seeing what people need, and as we're seeing how we can help and what we can contribute, keep going. Because I think, I'm glad I was in a rush today and I couldn't do my hair, I couldn't do my makeup. This is not mine. This is Maria's. I'm actually wearing a sweater. And I think that that's so important to see, though, if
you told our secret.
but that's the thing, is that, I don't ever want to gatekeep. And whenever we look at our community leaders, I think we think that they have everything so together and so figured out. Guys, I'm falling apart sometimes, like as a mom, as an entrepreneur, as someone in nonprofit, it is not always easy to put these things together. And I just want everyone to know that, like, not only that you're not alone, but that these resources are there. And when you take the steps to ask, even if you just shoot an email to, the main email for the magazine, or to the chamber, or to whatever organization or someone in your community, there are going to be people there to help you. Because as Latinos, like, we're here for familia, right? Like, we want to be together, we want to grow together, and honestly, it's the most sustainable way. So no matter which side of the fence you're on, if you need help, if you can help, or if you just want to have a good time, like, stay in it, keep going, and let's do it together. I think that's, of course, all the pitches for the chamber and all the organizations, but really my pitch is just for us to be together.
Yeah, and like their events are the best. So you guys have to look on their website, and they have, how many events do you have per year?
A lot. 8? Minimum 12. But that's the other thing. Like, you don't have to be Hispanic to come to an event. You don't need to be Latino. Also, I know we've had barriers, like when we have events, say, for example, at the Rivers Club. Some people get done with work. They feel like their attire may not fit or may fit. The reality is that, like, you belong everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. As Latinos, we belong in the most powerful spaces, in the most dynamic spaces. You belong everywhere. And I never want anyone to hesitate. I get probably the most questions about, what should I wear to the event? What is the attire like? That's so us. And that's okay. That's okay. But don't let it stop you. Ask, reach out, and if you're not sure, show up, and Maria will give you a jacket.
That's right. I'll bring a couple extra just in case. Well, that's a good place to end, but thank you so much, Melanie. I had so much fun.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I love you. I'm so happy, in case you guys haven't been here from the beginning, seeing where you are, where you started, where you are, and where you're going, and making sure that you're inclusive and taking everyone with you. It is extremely inspirational, and I'm so proud of you. Thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you so much for that. Well, guys, like I said, the chamber, look it up. Melanie's amazing. I will put all the links in the show notes. And to end here, just to remind you, visit our social media at Pitt Latino Mag, and the digital news website is pittlatinomag.com. Everything with us is Pitt Latino Mag. Okay? So take care, everyone. Gracias.
Thank you. Adios.
Thank you.